Hello, welcome back. In this session, I'll do a brief introduction to what's known as the pivot tables. And it's one way to get some analysis done quite easy. In the previous session, we had looked at how to get a count, how to get the mean, the average, the standard deviations, do a correlation, how to sort of try and create a 2 by 2 table, countifs, using the countif and using the countifs arguments or functions. So in this session, I look at the pivot tables, and we have the same data sheet like before. So you can see the data here. You've got the variable names on the first row, and you've got the data below that. The data has been coded. I have made it all as numerics with codes entered as numerics. So 1 and 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and things like that. And the code book is separate. I'm not going to detail of what each data point means and what the codes are, as it's only an illustration. But what I will recommend is that you take a data set that you have and then start practicing this. So listen, pause, redo a step, listen, redo a pause, redo a step, and that's the way to get this in. Don't expect or don't hope to master this just by listening to a video. That's not the way this will work. So practice as much as possible and practice with the data set that you have. So it makes it easier for you because you can relate to the data that you're practicing. Okay, so this is we had the raw data, as I mentioned earlier in the previous session. We had a raw data, which is, may click on the raw data, and we don't work with the raw data, so that if anything goes wrong, we are able to come back and work again. So we'll not work with the raw data, but we'll copy that and then we'll create and analyze data, and then you can see the same data here, but cleaned and made into a code book or data with codes. Okay, so now let's go on to the pivot tables. Now, what I would do is I will come down here and insert a new sheet, and let me name that sheet as means. So I'm renaming the sheet as mean. I can actually enter a title here like I did before saying the mean, but I'll just probably leave that for now. Now, or maybe I will. Why not? Mean of variables of interest. So I done that. Click on a cell, and now I come to insert. I come to pivot table. You can see it a PAVOT, TABLE on the insert menu. So I click on the pivot table. And now let me just see if I will increase the zoom a little bit so it becomes a bit more. Okay. I cancel this and let me just, it's at 100. I'll make it 136. I'll make it 170. Okay, I'm coming back. I am got the pivot table here. And you can see different options there. So click it, pause, watch what pops up, and you will get a sort of box which says choose the data that you want to analyze, select a table or range, use an external data source. But if you're connecting to an external data source, use this workbook's data model, choose where you want the pivot table to be placed, choose whether you want to analyze multiple tables, add this data to a data model. So you can choose that. So initially, as we are working through it, you'll go with the very basic ones. And this session is only on the very, very basic stuff. So I say I'm selecting a table or a range. And now I have to select it. And I come back to my analyze sheet. And now I'm clicking on study ID and I'm dragging and choosing the entire data set. I'm going down So we have 25 subjects, but I'm bringing it down to, let's say, 51 or 52. 51. I'm placing the pivot table report to be placed in the existing worksheet because I already created the worksheet known as mean. And so it's already here. It's located the mean and which cell I selected cell 3. So I click it. Now I click OK. Now when I come to mean, it comes to a sheet. You can see that there is this box on the left side which says pivot table 3. To build a report, choose fields from the pivot table field list, and you can see the pivot table field list here on the right side, my right side. And you can see that there are you can choose fields to add to the report. You can see that there are all the variables that you selected are there. So the variable list would depend on what you have selected, and then you can see drag fields between areas below. So you've got filters, you've got columns, you've got rows, you've got values. Now let's just say that I want to look at the means. I'm bringing this down to the values. I can drag it down, and I want the mean. So let me just, I put it in values, and then it shows automatically sum of age. You see a drop down menu next to it. I'm clicking on that. I'm coming to value field settings, and then summarize value field by, I'm clicking on average, and I click on, so I can name it, and a custom name is average of age. I'm just saying it as age, or leave it. I'll leave it as that, average. Click OK. Now I got the average of age. I again bring down age, drag it down there, and this time instead of repeat the process, click the right drop down menu button, value field settings, and now I'm coming down here and I'm clicking on the standard deviation. So now I've got the standard deviation. I got the average of the age, I've got the standard deviation of age. Now I'll just format these. So I'm clicking the entire row, and I'm going to format those cells as a number with 2 decimal points. So now I got the average of the age, I've got the standard deviation. So I look at the other averages that I can look at. So let's say that I'm looking at estimated fetal weight. Drag it down there. The default is it shows it as sum. So I want to change that. Click value field settings, average. Drag that down again. Come down. Click value field settings, standard deviation. So I got that. And let's say birth weight. Added birth weight. Come down, use the scroll button to come down there, and then I'm clicking on value field settings, average of birth weight. Again, I'm dragging birth weight down. Coming down, changing the sum of birth weight to, clicking on value field settings and getting the standard deviation. So what you see here is that you now got the average age and standard deviation, average of the estimated fetal weight, standard deviation, average of birth weight in grams, and the standard deviation of birth weight. That's created from the data. So you can get that very easily done. Yes? Now, that's how you do the mean and standard deviation. I'm again inserting a new sheet. Now, one thing you have to know with the pivot table is that you don't want to insert, ideally, till you become very comfortable with it, choose one sheet for one pivot table. So there is no confusion there, because sometimes as the cells increase or the values increase, it might overlap, and then it becomes a difficult thing to look at. So choose one sheet for a new pivot table. So I'm clicking a new sheet. And in this one, we will look at just creating a 2 by 2 table. So I'll again come to insert, pivot table, select a table or range, and I come to analyze. I bring it up and I choose the same range. So same data, and I'm bringing it up to, let's say, 51. And then existing worksheet, because I have already selected a sheet for starting from cell A3. Click on OK. Now let's say that I want to look at parity. So I drag down parity as a column. And within that, I want to again right click, field settings. What I want is the count. I come to custom, click on count. So I have parity count. I bring parity down to the values as well. Field settings, count. So now we got the count, right? Count of parity. Now I can, let's say that 0 was nulliparous and 1 was multiparous. Look at the code book and so I can rename it here. So I say that this is nulli and this is multi. So now I've got the labels also set up. We have got 25, I've got 20 multi, set multiparous and 5 nulliparous. If I click back here, this pivot table field comes up. So, okay. So now I want to look at parity and I want to look at PAH, and I bring PAH into the rows. PAH rows. Again, PAH is, I'm setting it up as a automatic, will sort of create what it intuitively decides is being. And you could choose that, or I could say that I want to customize it, and I look at the count. And I say, again, rename 0 as no and 1 as yes. Rename this as PIH. So now I've got the row and I've got the parity. I mean, I've got PH and I've got parity. PH as no yes, parity as nulliparous and multiparous. And I've got the count here. And I've created a 2 by 2 table. Now it shows blank here because we have chosen more than what is necessary. It's chosen some blank cells also. Now the blanks can be left like that, but you can then choose to say that, okay, I'm coming here, clicking on the drop down button, and I'm choosing to select only no yes to be shown. I'm removing the blank from it. Makes it more compact. I can do the same for the column labels also. So now it's more compact. So now I have my 2 by 2 table set up. Right? So that makes a 2 by 2 table. Now, if you want to make another 2 by 2 table for any particular variable, I would say that you can create it on a new sheet. That's easier for you to do. Now, if you want, you could always make this and then take the data out and put it into a separate sheet or into the table that you have created. You can keep it there. Let's say that I'm now changing PAH and I want to look at, I move PAH down there and I'm looking at Doppler. So we now get it again. We get the values of Doppler there. Values have changed. Again, rename it here and do it. So you can actually start doing it. But I would say that it's easier for you to just create it in new sheets and then see what happens. And after you become more comfortable, you can space it within the same sheet with adequate spacing in between. So let me put the Doppler back there and bring the PAH back here. So that's one thing to do. Now, I'll just leave it as sheet 4. What you can also do is we can create, come to on the top menu, click inside, and the top menu you can see pivot table analyze, and you can create charts, or you can insert charts here. Pivot table analyze, and you can see a pivot chart here. And then you can choose the type of chart that you want. Let me just say I'm choosing a pie chart, column chart, bar chart. So you can do that. Let's say that I chose a column chart. Click that. Now you got the chart. Got a graph form. Nully multi by PH. You got the filter there. You can choose to say I want the graph only by yes, by no. So you see how it changes. I want the graph, I want PH, yes, no, but I want the graph only by multipaths. See how it changes. So you can get different graphs and you can use it to easily get the information that you want. That's another use of the pivot table. Let me just bring it back to how it was. I'm selecting nully and multi PHs. Now the beauty of the pivot table is that if you know, if you have done the courses that we have been doing, you would have heard me often say that create the dummy tables, create your plan of analysis before you get into it, and make sure your data sheet or Excel sheet is data analysis friendly. Now, if you're sure of what you're going to look for, you know the variables that you want a 2x2 table for, you know the variables that you want the means and standard deviations for, it's easier for you to create this and keep even as the data is entered. Just after a few bits of data, entering maybe 5 or 10 entries, 5, 10 subjects, then you can create this and keep. And what happens after that is that it automatically updates. So I'll show that here. We had 25 subjects. Now let me just copy 1, 2, 3. Another 5 subjects. So I'll come to 30. Just copy that. Let's say I've entered it here. And I want to look at the analysis. I just need to come back here, click on any cell there, and then right click and come down to the menu and then say refresh. And you see the whole thing is updated by itself. So you can update and get the analysis data very easily. Let's see what happened here. It's automatically updated to 30. 624. You can see that the graph has also changed. Refresh. It's done it. So that's it. That's another advantage of a pivot table. Now, a pivot table gives you the framework to look at data in an easier manner. Ideally, I would say you use both the countifs method, the mean and standard deviation there, as well as a pivot table as a cross check, to make sure that you haven't inadvertently created an error while you are doing the analysis. But as you become more comfortable, you could straight away go with the pivot table for a lot of the analysis and use the functions for the analysis, the basic analysis that you can't do with the pivot table. These are just very basic, two very basic functions that you can use a pivot table for. It's very, very, very easy. What you need to do is you need to pause, practice each step on your data set, and it becomes very easy. And the biggest advantage along with the functions is that as you enter data, it automatically updates and you get a live updation of your analysis. So you don't have to actually spend a lot of time trying to run behind someone to do it for you at the end. As you enter, You can just refresh and keep getting the latest updated data. So this is the use of pivot table. I hope this is useful. The key point to remember is practice. Listen, pause, actually practice each step. Listen, pause, practice each step, and keep practicing it till you become very comfortable with it. Remember, you can put a lot of pivot tables in one particular worksheet, but to begin with, I would recommend that you use new sheets for each pivot table. And then as you become more comfortable and you're sure of what the data analysis is going to be, then you can think of putting them all in a single worksheet. Now, if you looked at the data, you can see that we had Liker. Let me just remove PH from here, and then I'll show Liker. So I bring Liker down here. It has 3 categories. And you can see the 3 categories coming here. So that's the advantage of this. Categories are formed, it takes it and it puts it very beautifully for you as a table in a tabular form. Let me put Liker back. Make sure that you are renaming the row and the quotes, putting the appropriate quotes as you are doing for each one. So that is about the pivot table. Have fun, keep practicing, stay safe, and practice, practice, practice. Be happy. See you soon. So in this session, continuing from where we left off, we had looked at the 2x2 tables and we looked at the graph. I want to show you one more thing that we can do with the pivot table. Now, once you have created a pivot table, it's there. I'm just clicking on it. And I got the pivot table fields here. I've got what you've chosen. I want to show you something else. I come to the top, I come to pivot table analyze. And then I'm coming to insert slicer. And the slicer allows you to filter data visually, makes it easier to, its slicer essentially is a filter. And let me click on insert slicer. And then I say, I want to look at the same 2x2 table, this 2x2 table. I want to look at it by filtering for, let's say, Doppler normal, abnormal, and let's say neonate estimated feature weights, centiles. And I click OK. Now we have got 2 things popping up, an EFW centile slicer or filter and a Doppler filter. And so let me say that I want to look at EFW centile, that is 1. 1 was less than 3. Doppler 1. And you can see the numbers. Now it's showing you a less than 3 category EFW centile and abnormal Doppler. So you can actually use the slicer to start looking at the same 2x2 table in smaller segments. 0. That is the more than 50th centile, estimated feature more than 50th centile, and normal Doppler. You can see how the numbers change. So you get that by pregnancy-induced hypertension, you get it by null and multipliers for these groups as well. So you're now able to look at the data with more variables added. That's what the slicer does. It adds filters, and it's an easy way to visualize and use it. So what do? You come to the top menu, pivot table analyze will be there, and then you click on it and you will see insert slicer. Come to the slicer, choose what you want to choose, and so you can see pivot table analyze, insert slicer, choose the variables that you want, to have, let me just add neonatal mortality as well. So that you can say, click OK. Neonatal mortality has come. I want only those who have with neonatal mortality. And you see that it's no pregnancy-induced hypertension, multiparous, no. So you can play around with it. So just send the function that you need to play around, get used to. And it opens up a lot of possibilities to look at the data very easy. If you're using a count ifs function, we can still use a count ifs function to look at this, but this particular function on the pivot table makes that look so much more easier to perform and so much more faster to perform. So I'm seeing estimated fetal weight between 3rd and 10th centile, between 10 to 50th centile, abnormal Doppler. So you see how easily you can get the numbers changing, right? And then you take that numbers out and put it into your table in word processor or even in a separate Excel sheet, and you've got your 2x2 table all well set. So it allows you to do this quite fast. So that's all for now. I just want you to look at this also and practice using the slicer as well. Take care, be happy, stay safe. Thank you so much.